Hello again. Today I'm going to discuss another book in the martial arts series, and it's this book, In Search of the Ultimate Martial Art by Jerry Beasley. It's the Jeet Kune Do experience. It was written in 1989, and a few years later the UFC had the search for the ultimate martial art through a different venue. What this book looks at really is the development of JKD and Bruce Lee. And the book starts off, Jerry Beasley has done a lot of research into the history of martial arts, and it starts off with a kind of overview of the historical development out in the Far East, and then the martial arts, in particular karate, development in the United States. And then he goes on to talk about Bruce Lee and his life, his philosophy, his background training and so on, which led to the formation of JKD. There is really the core of the book, and a massive part of it is an interview with Dan Inosanto. Now, I regard Dan as a living national treasure of the martial arts. He really is. He's not only a great instructor, but he's a really good human being. And this interview really explores the relationship between Dan and Bruce Lee, Dan's early training in other systems, and how he found Bruce Lee, and the kind of things they did in training and the group they had together and so on, and the legacy of Bruce Lee. There was quite a lot of resistance from the traditional karate community to what Bruce Lee was talking about, particularly in things like Black Belt magazine, where he was not sniping at the way the martial arts were taught, but he was showing that there was alternatives. So that's explored in the book in some detail. Another chapter is an interview with Larry Hartel. And Larry, who's no longer with us, he came over to the UK, and I attended his class up here near Liverpool, and I found him to be a very interesting character. And he was the kind of grappling guru of JKD. He explored that side of it a lot, and he taught us what was called the lock flow, which was a system of flowing from one joint lock into another, which at the time I thought was really interesting. Later on, I kind of questioned its utility, but just in the context it was taught, I found it interesting. Another interview is with Joe Louis, the famous competitor who trained for a while with Bruce Lee. Now, the point is made that Joe was already a top competitor and a champion when he met Bruce Lee. So there's no way that Bruce Lee was responsible for his success, but he certainly did learn stuff from him. And again, it's a bit of a name dropping exercise here, but Joe Louis came over to Liverpool. Terry hosted him, put on a seminar, and on it he explained these Bruce Lee principles, the different angle attacks and attack by drawing and all this kind of thing. And he quite openly acknowledged that he got this stuff from Bruce Lee. And it was a fascinating seminar, and he was a really good instructor. The only thing about it that kind of jarred a bit was he borrowed a gi as I recall. He used to wear a star and stripes gi when he competed, but he borrowed a black gi from somewhere because he didn't like the white gi, the uniform, and he at the start he just introduced himself and said, "I don't bow," and then when he came to elicit questions, one of the traditional instructors put his hand up and "Why don't you bow?" And that was the only thing on his mind. He wasn't interested in learning anything. It was just in his map of reality, you couldn't learn anything unless you'd bowed first. So one of the things that Joe Lewis talks about in the book is the falling out he had with Bruce Lee, and it was over in 1969, a competition in Long Beach, where Joe Lewis entered, and he put down, he had to fill in a form, and it asked for your style and your instructor, and he just put his original Okinawan style down, and Bruce Lee heard about this and kind of stormed off because he wanted recognition. Another instructor in the book is Gracielas Casillas, who I met in the United States. She presented a class on training women, which I attended. I've attended a couple of these classes. One was with Vicky Farnham, John Farnham's wife, and I've reviewed John's book on pistol shooting, and his wife Vicky was teaching a women's firearms instructor program, and Gracielas was at a different conference taught one on training women. I always found this very interesting. I think male instructors should attend such training, get the female point of view. And I always remember a story that Masayub told about Gracielas, where she was attacked basically in a lonely area by a gang, and she used a knife with lethal effect to defend herself from this kind of training she'd done. Anyway, the book is very, very heavily illustrated, lots of sequences, lots of drills, and it really does show the system of JKD, which I think I've said before kind of has taken a bit of a back seat these days, but at the time the book was written, and for the first few years it really was a very, very major part of the martial arts. So anybody interested in it, the Bruce Lee methods and so on, it's a good resource for that.